Can you imagine walking in the shoes of someone so high in society, yet feeling the weight of their responsibilities? The life of a medieval noblewoman is often painted with rich colors tapestries woven with gold threads, grand castles towering over vast lands, and feasts fit for kings. It is a life many envy, a life that feels distant, almost unreachable to those of us living today. But as we step into her world, you may begin to see that, for all its outward wealth and beauty, it is also a life of hidden burdens, a delicate balance between power and restraint. Let me take you there, to the heart of this world, where you can hear the soft rustling of velvet dresses, the clinking of goblets filled with wine, and the murmur of courtly conversation. Picture yourself in the great hall of a castle walls adorned with tapestries depicting hunts and battles, candlelight flickering against stone walls. The fire crackles in the hearth, sending warm, golden light across the room. There, you sit at a long, carved oak table, your hands resting on its polished surface, fingertips brushing the cool wood. The sounds of laughter and music swirl around you. The rich scents of roasted meats, spiced wines, and fresh bread fill the air, and the warmth of the room makes you feel momentarily at peace. You are a noblewoman, and the privileges of your station are undeniable. Your life, from the outside, seems full of ease, a life others might dream of. And yet, as you look around at the faces of those gathered, you can't help but feel a strange heaviness in your chest. You see, the privileges of your world come at a price. Every decision, every gesture you make is under scrutiny. Every choice you make carries the weight of your family's name, of the future of the lands you will one day inherit, of the alliances that must be maintained for the sake of power. Your family's wealth may surround you, but it is also an unspoken chain, binding you to a life that is both a blessing and a burden. As a noblewoman, you are never truly free. Your time is not your own. You are expected to uphold the values and traditions of your family, to marry strategically, to bear children who will carry on the family name. Your life is one of constant negotiation between your own desires and the needs of those around you. Yes, you live in a grand house, but it is not just any house, it is a place where every room, every hallway, every piece of furniture has a purpose, a role to play in the delicate web of status and power that surrounds you. In the moments when you find solitude, perhaps in the silence of a garden or the quiet of your chambers, you feel the sting of isolation. For all the attention you receive in public, there is a part of you that is often overlooked, your own humanity, your own dreams. In these rare moments of peace, when the weight of your role lifts just slightly, you can almost imagine what it might be like to live without the endless expectations that follow you like shadows. But the paradox remains. You are privileged in so many ways. You have the power to influence the lives of others, to shape the future of your family and your lands. You wear your title like a crown, and the world looks at you with admiration, envy, and even fear. Yet this power is a fragile thing, one that could slip away in an instant, should you falter in your duties. You are a woman of high status, yes, but also a woman whose life is always in service to something greater than herself. I invite you to reflect on this. Can you imagine the constant tension between the freedom of your status and the limits imposed by it? The feeling of being both important and yet, at times, small? How does that sit with you? Think for a moment about your own life. Are there things you are bound to, responsibilities you must carry, that weigh on you as much as this noblewoman's? It's not hard to see the connection, is it? The difference is only the scale. The stakes are higher for her, yes, but the struggle between privilege and sacrifice is universal. Let's walk a little further into her world and see the challenges, the power, and the quiet strength that lie beneath the surface of her life. As we continue, we'll discover the quiet struggles she faces, and perhaps in doing so, find reflections of our own lives hidden in the folds of history. What if your life was already mapped out for you, from birth? How would you navigate the pressure to fulfill family expectations, knowing that every choice you make is tied to centuries of legacy and honor? Imagine, from the moment you are born, that the world has already decided who you will become, your role carved into history, your future shaped by the bloodlines that flow through your veins. This is the reality for a medieval noblewoman. Your life begins in the quiet of a noble house, with servants tending to your every need, even before you are old enough to understand their roles. You are born into a family that carries centuries of history. Your lineage is both your greatest asset and your heaviest burden. The house you live in is not just a place of comfort. It is a symbol of power and prestige, built on generations of careful alliances, land holdings, and the weight of expectations. Your family's name is a legacy, one you will spend your entire life preserving, whether or not you ever truly understand its full meaning. As a young girl, you are not free to explore the world in the way others might. Your days are filled with lessons, not just in reading or writing, but in how to conduct yourself with dignity, grace, and composure. Your education is carefully designed, not to nurture your curiosity or creativity, but to ensure that you uphold the ideals of the aristocracy. You are taught the art of conversation, of making the right connections, of walking gracefully through the halls of power. You are schooled in how to please and how to avoid displeasing. Everything about you, from the way you sit to the way you speak, is molded to reflect the values of your family. Your family's influence is felt at every turn, and there is no room for error. You are taught to recognize the weight of your name, the significance of your marriage, and the power that your children will one day inherit. Every step you take is part of a greater design, a plan that was set in motion long before your birth. You are expected to marry well, to uphold the family's wealth and power, and to bear children who will carry the family name forward. Your worth, in many ways, is determined by your ability to fulfill these duties. At times, you may look around and wonder what life might be like beyond the walls of your family's home. You may long for the freedom to make your own choices, to decide for yourself who you will love, how you will spend your time, and what you will do with your life. But these dreams are fleeting. You know that your future is already written, that the expectations of your family are not just your own, but part of a much larger web of alliances, debts, and obligations. You may not have a say in whom you marry, but you understand the importance of that union, the security it brings, the power it ensures, and the legacy it guarantees. There is little room for rebellion, and even less for self-discovery. The very fact that you are a woman places limits on the choices available to you. Your fate is bound by your family's needs, and the idea of pursuing your own desires seems selfish and, at times, almost dangerous. There are whispers of other women who defied their families or chose their own paths, but these are stories that rarely end well. A woman who strays too far from the expectations set for her can quickly find herself without the support of her family, her name tarnished and her future uncertain. And yet there is a quiet strength that rises within you, even in the midst of these limitations. You come to understand the subtle ways in which you can influence the world around you, even if it's through small gestures or quiet words. You may not have the freedom to choose your own destiny in the ways you desire, but you learn the art of navigating the constraints of your life. You become skilled at managing relationships, at making others feel seen and heard, at using your position to ensure that your family's legacy remains intact. The pressure to live up to family expectations can be suffocating at times, but it also forges in you a resilience that others may not see. It teaches you to understand the delicate balance between duty and desire, between the freedom you long for and the responsibilities that are yours by birthright. In this way, your early years shape you into someone who is not just a passive participant in the life set out for you, but a woman who will learn to wield the power of her name in quiet, subtle ways. As you grow older, the weight of these expectations will only grow heavier. But for now, as a young girl, you live in the awareness that your future has already been decided. The question that lingers, though, is whether you will ever be able to define yourself outside of your family's shadow. What would it be like, you wonder, to carve your own path? To stand at the crossroads of your own life and choose, just once, what is truly yours to decide? It's a question that will echo throughout your life, a question that may never be fully answered. But for now, you are just a young girl, living in the carefully constructed world your family has made for you. And though the path ahead is clear, the journey will not be an easy one. How will you navigate this pressure to fulfill the expectations placed upon you? And what, if anything, will remain of your own self when the weight of duty is finally lifted? These are questions for another time. For now, you are simply learning how to walk the path that has been set before you. Do you think love could ever truly blossom in such a transactional world? A world where marriages are less about the union of hearts and more about securing political alliances, wealth, and land. Imagine, for a moment, that your future is decided not by your own desires, but by the needs of your family, the ambitions of men, and the power dynamics of a kingdom. This is the world of the medieval noblewoman. Your marriage from the very beginning is a carefully orchestrated event, a contract between families rather than individuals. The idea of love, true, untainted love, is not a factor that is ever discussed. You are a bargaining chip, your worth measured in terms of alliances, land holdings, and the future of your family's name. Your father's negotiations, the letters exchanged with other noble families, and the final decision are all made long before you ever get a say in the matter. It's hard, isn't it, to imagine such a thing? The notion that your entire future, your very sense of self, could be bound by someone you might not even know. As a young girl, you are told about your future husband, his name, his lands, his titles. His family's honor is as important as your own. You will marry for all the right reasons that have nothing to do with you as an individual, with your feelings, your hopes, or your dreams. Your life is tied to his, but it's not about your union. It's about the power it grants both families. You may find yourself feeling small in such a situation. Perhaps you wonder what it would have been like if you had a choice. If you could, just once, decide for yourself whom you would marry, someone who made you feel alive, who cared for you not because of your family's title, but for who you truly were. But of course, this is not how the world works. The marriage arrangement is set, and in many ways it feels like a distant thing, a future that you cannot yet grasp, as though it belongs to someone else. When the day finally arrives, the wedding is a grand affair. The hall is adorned with tapestries and flowers, and the sounds of music fill the air. The eyes of the court are upon you, watching as you walk down the aisle, a new chapter in the history of your family. You wear the finest gown, your hair done up with delicate jewels, your hands adorned with rings of gold. It is an event of great prestige, but it is also an event of great pressure. As you stand there, gazing at the man who is now your husband, you cannot help but wonder, will you ever truly know him? Or is this simply another step in a life that was not truly your own? At first, your marriage may feel distant, like two people playing roles in a game of power. Your conversations with your husband are not those of a shared life, but rather of strategy, what lands can be gained, which alliances can be secured, and how to ensure the strength of both houses. Your hearts may not be intertwined, but your lives are bound by the roles you must play. Yet, in the quiet moments when the court's eyes are turned away, you may find something unexpected. There are moments, perhaps fleeting, where affection slips in between the cracks of duty and expectation. You might catch a glance from your husband that is softer than usual, or a word of kindness that speaks not of power but of something more human. In these rare moments you begin to wonder, is this affection? Is this the beginning of something that might, one day, grow into love? Or is it just another way to fulfill your roles in the intricate dance of power? But the complexities of marriage go beyond affection and connection. For a noblewoman, marriage is also about sacrifice. In the quiet of the night, you may long for a life different from this a life, where you are not just a piece in a political game, but a woman with desires and passions of her own. You may dream of a world where you could speak freely with your husband, where love could bloom without the weight of power looming over it. Yet, as the days pass, you understand that the space for such dreams is limited. Your husband's affections, however tender, are not the foundation of your marriage. Your role in securing his lands and title is. The emotional weight of your marriage is not simply in the moments of loss or love, but in the quiet, unseen burdens you carry. You are not just a wife. You are a partner in the perpetuation of a legacy, the steward of lands and fortunes, the mother of heirs. And as the years go by, this weight only grows heavier. You may give birth to children, and each one is a new piece in the puzzle of power and lineage. Your life, for all its privileges, is marked by a duty to the family, to the name, to the title that was not your own to choose. But perhaps in some small way you begin to navigate this world of duty with grace. Perhaps you find moments of joy in your marriage, moments where affection is not bound by the rules of politics, but by something deeper, more human. These moments may be rare, but they are there, tucked away like hidden treasures in the folds of your daily life. They are small, fleeting, but they remind you that even in a world defined by power and politics, there is space for human connection. So, do you think love could ever truly blossom in such a transactional world? Perhaps in the spaces between obligations and power there is room for affection, for connection, for the kind of love that does not fit neatly into the confines of marriage contracts and family expectations. It may not always be the kind of love you imagined as a young girl, but it is still love quiet, tender, and resilient. And perhaps that, too, is something worth cherishing. It seems like such a luxurious life, doesn't it? A life of wealth, fine clothes, and lavish feasts. A life where the world outside your castle walls seems so distant, so unreachable. But what if you couldn't leave your home for days, months, or even years? What if the walls that separated you from the outside world were not just made of stone, but of obligations, responsibilities, and the constant hum of daily life? Let's walk through her daily world together and discover the paradox of a noblewoman's life, one filled with privilege yet bound by limits. The castle is your world, your kingdom. It's a beautiful, sprawling place filled with tapestries, courtyards, and soaring towers. You might gaze out from your chambers and see the vast lands your family holds, rolling hills, quiet forests, and fields that stretch as far as the eye can see. And yet, despite the beauty of it all, your life is confined within these walls. The doors to the outside world might as well be locked, for you spend most of your days inside, your movements limited to the spaces within the castle grounds. The days blend together in a routine, a rhythm that never quite allows you the freedom to step outside your role. You rise early as the first light of dawn filters through your window. The castle is quiet at this hour, and you take a moment to appreciate the silence before the bustle of the day begins. Servants come to attend to your needs, but you are already thinking of the tasks that await you. You are the mistress of this house, and the weight of that responsibility is heavy upon you. Running a noble estate is no simple task. There are lands to manage, resources to oversee, and numerous servants to keep in order. Your day begins with meetings, sometimes with your steward, sometimes with a representative from a nearby village or town. There is always some issue to resolve, a dispute between tenants, a request for more provisions, or perhaps an urgent matter regarding the state of the family's land. As the woman of the house, you are expected to make decisions, to manage these affairs with wisdom and grace. Your husband may be away on business or involved in political matters, leaving you to ensure that everything runs smoothly in his absence. Your days are filled with this kind of work, making sure that the family's wealth is preserved and that the estate remains in good health. But it is not just about overseeing resources, there is the matter of the people who work for you. Servants, maids, and cooks all have their roles, and it is your job to ensure they fulfill them. You must keep the household in order, manage the staff, and see to it that the castle is running like a well-oiled machine. At times this can feel like an endless cycle, a task that never truly ends, always requiring your attention, your vigilance. And yet, for all the authority you wield within these walls, there is an undeniable limit to your power. You are a woman, and as such your influence is constrained. The decisions you make must always be framed within the context of your family's needs, and often your voice is but one in a long line of others men who control the lands and hold the titles. Your power lies in your ability to manage, to influence, and to direct the affairs of the household. But it is a power that is often unseen, unnoticed by the world beyond your home. The responsibility of raising children is also yours, another role that adds weight to your day. You may have several children to care for, to nurture, to raise into the future leaders of the family. The act of motherhood is, in many ways, the most important task you can undertake. The legacy of your family rests in the hands of the children you bear. You are expected to educate them, to train them in the ways of nobility, to teach them how to be leaders, rulers, and stewards of the land. But as you watch them grow, you also feel the pain of knowing that, in the end, they will carry a burden similar to your own. They will one day be confined to the same walls, bound by the same expectations, and it is your job to prepare them for this life. The limitations of your life are further emphasized in the smallness of your world. The castle, though grand, is not a place of great variety or excitement. There are the same faces every day, the same duties to attend to, and the same routine to follow. You may long for something different, something beyond the walls of this house, perhaps a chance to travel, to see the world, to experience life outside of the expectations placed upon you. But these dreams are fleeting. The reality of your role as the noblewoman of the house is all-consuming. Your days are filled with tasks that, while essential to the family's survival, often feel like a never-ending cycle. And yet, there is something to be said for the control you do have. In this world of constraints and limits, you are the one who decides the details of daily life. You determine the meals that will be served, the order of the household, and the ways in which your children are raised. You may not have control over the larger forces of the world wars, politics, and the whims of men, but you do have a certain power within these walls. The lives of the people around you depend on you, and in this quiet, domestic sphere, you are the one who holds the reins. There is, too, a strange sense of privilege that comes with this life. While your world is small, it is filled with comforts that many others can only dream of. The warmth of the hearth, the luxury of soft linens, the abundance of food, these are privileges that you can take for granted, even as you carry the weight of your responsibilities. It is a life of contradictions, full of comfort, yet full of duty, full of power, yet constrained by invisible walls. So, as you go through your day, managing the estate, tending to your children, and overseeing the running of the household, you begin to realize the complexity of your role. Your life is filled with duties that define you, and yet there is an ever-present longing for something beyond these walls. It is a life of privilege, yes, but also of limitations. A life of control, but also one of quiet sacrifice. And in the midst of all this, you find yourself wondering what would it feel like to step outside of these walls, to walk freely, unburdened by the weight of expectation. Perhaps in time you'll find out. But for now, you are here, within these walls, shaping a life that is both your own and yet not fully yours at all. Could a noblewoman ever shape the course of history without stepping into the limelight? What if her influence was quiet, subtle, hidden in the shadows of power, yet no less significant for its quiet nature? The medieval world, with its grand courts and towering figures of authority, might seem to leave women in the margins, excluded from the direct halls of power. But if you look closely, you will see that behind the thrones of kings and lords, there were women who shaped the course of history, not through open command, but through a quiet, resolute influence. Imagine yourself in this world living within the walls of a grand castle, surrounded by the clang of armor, the whispers of courtiers, and the weight of your family's legacy. You may not hold the formal title of ruler, but that does not mean your influence is any less. You wield power in ways that others cannot see, in ways that are more intimate, more subtle, but no less powerful. Your role as a noblewoman is not one defined by public spectacle. You do not stand at the front of armies, nor do you sit on the throne. But that does not mean you have no voice. In the quiet moments when your husband is tired after a long day of court affairs, or when a decision needs to be made that could affect the future of your family, your voice becomes a guiding hand. You might not have the official power to rule, but in those moments of private conversation, your influence becomes undeniable. You understand the intricacies of court life, how to maneuver through the labyrinth of alliances and betrayals, how to sway the opinions of others without ever speaking a word in public. In the space of your marriage, you and your husband may be equal partners, even if society refuses to recognize it. You may advise him on matters of diplomacy, strategy, or estate management, offering insights that others might overlook. Your knowledge of the court, the people within it, and the broader political landscape makes you an invaluable asset, even if your role remains unspoken. At times, your influence extends beyond your husband. As the mistress of your household, you manage the family's lands, wealth, and resources, making decisions that directly affect the future of your family's power. When your husband is away, you are the one who must oversee the day-to-day operations, ensuring that the estate runs smoothly and that relationships with neighboring lords and landowners remain strong. Your decisions, while never publicized, help to preserve and grow your family's influence. You are not simply a figurehead, you are a manager, a strategist, a keeper of your family's interests. In the royal court, you may find yourself influencing not just the decisions made within the walls of your own castle, but in the broader political landscape as well. Though you may never be invited to speak in the council chambers, your alliances and friendships with other women of influence can shape the course of events. Women, after all, do not always wield power in the same way as men. Their influence is often quieter, more subtle, but it is no less effective. Through your relationships with other noblewomen, queens, and courtiers, you create a network of support and influence that stretches across the kingdom. The decisions made by powerful men in the court may be shaped, not just by the men themselves, but by the women who stand behind them, guiding them through the unspoken channels of power. You understand the political game better than most. You know when to speak and when to remain silent. You know how to play the long game, building alliances over time and subtly directing events in ways that others fail to see. It's not always about making the loudest claim or taking the most visible action. Sometimes it's about knowing when to wait, when to listen, and when to act. In this way, you navigate the complex world of power with a calm, steady hand, shaping the course of history from the shadows. But it is not just your intelligence or strategy that gives you power, it is your resilience. Life for a noblewoman is not easy. The weight of your family's legacy is always on your shoulders, and the constant demands of managing a household, bearing children, and maintaining your family's position can leave you exhausted. Yet, despite the many challenges, you continue to carry the mantle with grace and strength. Your ability to adapt, to learn from your experiences, and to face each new challenge with quiet determination is a testament to the strength that lies beneath the surface of your poised exterior. Your influence, though subtle, is also one of great resilience. You are able to navigate a world that often seems indifferent to your needs, to manage relationships that are constantly shifting, and to find ways to use your position to protect and advance your family's interests. This resilience is not born from power, but from an understanding that power does not always come from the loudest voice, but from the ability to endure, to adapt, and to remain steadfast in the face of adversity. Perhaps the most powerful thing about your influence is the way it transcends time. The decisions you make, the alliances you form, and the subtle guidance you provide to the men in your life shape the future of your family for generations. While history may not record your name in the annals of kings and queens, your legacy endures in the success of your family, in the wealth and power they retain, and in the political networks you've carefully cultivated. Your role, though not always recognized, is vital to the survival and thriving of the family you've worked so hard to protect. Could a noblewoman ever shape the course of history without stepping into the limelight? The answer is yes. The quiet, unseen ways in which you influence the course of events are no less significant than the visible actions of kings and lords. You may never sit on a throne or command an army, but your power is felt nonetheless through the quiet decisions you make, the alliances you foster, and the resilience you show in the face of every challenge. In a world that often undervalues the influence of women, you stand as a quiet yet powerful force, shaping history from the shadows with a steady, unyielding hand. How would you cope with the loss of everything you thought you knew? The life of a medieval noblewoman, though filled with privilege, was far from free of hardship. Beneath the grand tapestries, the lavish feasts, and the political power, there were personal struggles that shaped her existence in ways that others could not see. Loss, betrayal, and the unrelenting weight of duty were the hidden burdens that often threatened to undo her. Let's understand the strength of a woman who lived through unimaginable pain, and discover how she faced the tragedies that marred her life. Your days, once filled with routine and responsibility, may suddenly be shattered by war. A distant conflict, perhaps a political struggle or a battle between neighboring factions, can bring destruction to your doorstep. The sound of war drums and the sight of soldiers marching toward your lands are more than just distant news. They are a warning of the chaos to come. You may feel a strange sense of helplessness, knowing that the fate of your family's lands, your children, and even your own life are at the mercy of forces beyond your control. As the war rages on, the once safe walls of your castle no longer offer the comfort they once did. You may lose contact with your husband, who has gone off to fight, and the days stretch long in uncertainty. The servants are busy, the men of the household away or caught in the midst of battle, and you are left to manage the affairs of the estate. The weight of leadership, once shared, now falls entirely on your shoulders. You try to keep the peace within the castle, to ensure that the household runs smoothly, but there are moments when fear creeps in. Will your family survive the ravages of war? Will your children grow up in a world shaped by violence and loss? The uncertainty gnaws at you, but you press on, doing what must be done, for there is no other choice. And then there is the inevitable tragedy that many noblewomen must face, the death of a child. Perhaps a fever sweeps through the household, or an accident takes the life of your youngest. The loss of a child is a wound that cuts deeper than any sword. As a mother, your heart breaks in ways words cannot capture. The dreams you had for your child, the hopes of their future, vanish in an instant. You must endure the agony of burying a piece of yourself, knowing that this sorrow is shared by no one but you. Your heart aches, but you cannot afford to show it. You must remain strong, for the others in your care, the surviving children. The servants who look to you for guidance depend on you to hold things together. There are moments when grief threatens to consume you. You might retreat to the quiet of your chambers, away from the eyes of the court, away from the expectations placed upon you. In these private moments, the tears flow freely, the weight of your loss taking its toll on your spirit. But there is no time to linger too long in sorrow. Your role as a mother, as the matriarch of the family, requires you to rise again. You cannot allow the family's legacy to falter, no matter how deeply you ache inside. The world outside may not see your grief, but it is a quiet, constant companion, one that shapes every decision, every action. Widowhood is another cruel twist of fate that many noblewomen face. The death of your husband, whether from battle, illness, or old age, strips away the final illusion of security you might have had. When he passes, the weight of the family's future falls squarely on your shoulders. Suddenly, you are both the caretaker of your children and the guardian of your family's estates, and you must navigate the shifting power dynamics that come with widowhood. There is no longer a man to lead the household in the public eye, and you must fill that space whether or not you are ready. The pain of losing a husband is immense, but it is not just personal loss that you must contend with, it is the political and social fallout as well. As a widow, you may face pressure from your family, from your late husband's allies, and even from the court to remarry. Your position is now vulnerable, and the alliances that once seemed strong may start to unravel. The decisions you make during this time are not just about your own heartache. They are about the future of your children, the future of your family's land, and the role you will continue to play in the larger game of politics. The pressure to find another marriage, to secure another alliance, may weigh heavily on you, even as you grieve the loss of your companion and your confidant. At times, you may wonder if you are strong enough to carry the weight of all these tragedies. The pain is relentless and the responsibility never ceases. But then you remember this is the world you were born into. This is the legacy you carry. You have been trained your entire life to endure. You know that, despite the heartache, you must continue. You are a noblewoman, and the survival of your family's legacy depends on your ability to persevere. Even as your heart aches, you begin to find ways to cope. Perhaps you turn to prayer, seeking solace in the words of the scriptures. Perhaps you confide in a close friend, a fellow noblewoman who understands the unique struggles you face. In these quiet moments of reflection, you find the strength to keep moving forward. You learn to navigate the complexities of grief, finding ways to honor your lost loved ones while maintaining the responsibilities that continue to demand your attention. The emotional toll of these struggles is immense, and yet, through it all, you continue. Your strength is not in your ability to avoid pain, it is in your capacity to endure. to carry on even when the weight of the world seems unbearable. In this way, you become a quiet force, one that holds the family together, even as the world around you crumbles. The challenges you face, the tragedies you endure, leave scars on your soul, but they also leave you stronger, more resilient, and more determined to protect what you have left. In the end, your journey is one of quiet courage. You may never receive accolades or recognition for the strength you show, but you carry on, knowing that your family, your legacy, and your children depend on you. In the face of unimaginable pain, you are unbroken. And in that unbrokenness, there is a power that cannot be undone. How do we truly remember those who lived in the shadows of history? The lives of noblewomen, for all their complexity, have often been shaped by the narratives created for them, narratives that focus on their marriages, their wealth, their beauty, and the alliances they forged. These women, who played vital roles in the shaping of their families, their lands, and sometimes even entire kingdoms, are frequently relegated to the background of history. Their true selves, their struggles, their wisdom, and their resilience are often hidden behind layers of stereotypes and assumptions. Let us explore the legacy of these remarkable women and ask, how much of their lives do we really know? In the grand sweep of history, the names of noblewomen are often overshadowed by those of their male counterparts. Kings, lords, and warriors are the figures who dominate the chronicles. Their deeds recorded in glowing detail, their lives celebrated as the stuff of legend. The noblewoman, however, is frequently mentioned only in the context of her marriage or her beauty. History remembers her as a wife, a daughter, a mother, her own identity often shaped by the roles she was expected to play rather than by her individual contributions. Her name might appear briefly in the pages of a family chronicle, mentioned alongside her husband's, her marriage a footnote in the tale of his rise to power. But rarely do we hear the full story of who she was, what she thought, or how she navigated the complex web of politics and society that defined her existence. Why, then, are the lives of these women often lost to time? The answer lies in the way history has been written, shaped by the perspectives of those in power who, more often than not, were men. The chroniclers of the past, whether they were noblemen, clergy, or scribes, tended to focus on what was visible and tangible, the outward displays of power, wealth, and success. A noblewoman's influence, while perhaps immense, was often exercised behind the scenes. She may have advised her husband, managed estates, or used her connections to influence political decisions, but these contributions were not always recognized in the historical record. What was recorded was often what could be seen: her marriage to a powerful man, her beauty, her role as the mother of heirs. In this way, her true power, the subtle yet significant ways she shaped the course of events, was erased from history's pages. But even within these limited records, there are glimpses of the remarkable women they were. Perhaps a brief mention in a letter or a diary entry reveals her intelligence, her wit, her political acumen. Perhaps a battle was won or a treaty negotiated, and we know, though history may not have recorded it, that behind that success was a woman whose guidance, whose determination made all the difference. Yet these moments are fleeting, and more often than not, they are buried beneath layers of male-dominated storytelling. The result is that history remembers the noblewoman not for her agency, but for her connection to the men around her. Imagine, for a moment, that we could truly see these women for who they were, not just as wives or daughters, but as individuals in their own right. What would we discover? Perhaps we would find that their true selves were far more complex than the narrow roles history has assigned them. Perhaps we would see the quiet resilience they exhibited in the face of tragedy, the intelligence they brought to the political decisions they helped shape, and the power they wielded in their own right. Perhaps we would recognize the many ways in which they fought for their families, their lands, and their own identities in a world that so often sought to define them by the men they married. Consider the legacies of some of these women. Eleanor of Aquitaine, for example, was not merely the wife of two kings, nor the mother of two more. She was a force in her own right, a woman who ruled in her own name, who led armies, and who influenced the politics of Europe in ways that were rarely acknowledged at the time. Yet, despite her immense contributions, much of her life is overshadowed by her marriages. She is often remembered first and foremost as a wife and mother, rather than as a ruler in her own right. What would history have been like if we remembered these women as they truly were? If we gave them the recognition they deserve not for the roles they played in the lives of the men around them, but for their own strengths, intelligence, and contributions? What if we told the story of the noblewoman not as a passive figure, but as a central, active participant in the shaping of history? Perhaps in some ways this is already beginning to change. Over time, historians have begun to recognize the importance of women's roles in history, to unearth the stories that were once buried beneath centuries of patriarchal narratives. We now know more about the women who shaped the medieval world, and their stories are being told with more nuance, more depth, and more respect than ever before. But even today, these women remain, for the most part, shadows in the pages of history. As we reflect on the legacy of these noble women, it is important to recognize that their lives were not just defined by their marriages or their beauty. Their power lay not in the titles they held, but in the quiet, often unseen ways they navigated the complexities of medieval life. They were more than mere symbols of wealth and power. They were intelligent, resilient, and resourceful women who played vital roles in the politics, economy, and culture of their time. So, how do we truly remember those who lived in the shadows of history? Perhaps it is by recognizing the hidden strength and quiet power that they possessed. Perhaps it is by remembering not just the marriages they were part of, but the legacies they created in their own right. History may not always have recorded their stories in full, but that does not mean their contributions were any less significant. Their legacy lives on, not in the footnotes of history, but in the subtle, enduring ways they shaped the world around them. As we look back on the lives of these women, let us remember them not just as figures in the background, but as the powerful, multifaceted individuals they were. Their stories, though often overlooked, are just as important as those of the kings and warriors who dominate the pages of history. And perhaps in telling their stories, we can begin to understand the true nature of power, and the many ways in which women, throughout history, have shaped the world. As we conclude, think about the countless stories of strength, sacrifice, and resilience that history has quietly forgotten. How will we remember the women who shaped our world? The medieval noblewoman's life, though often overshadowed by the grandeur of kings and knights, was one of immense complexity. She lived in a world where power, prestige, and struggle intertwined, where duty and influence shaped her path in ways both seen and unseen. Her story is not just one of privilege, but of resilience and quiet strength, a story too often overlooked, yet integral to the fabric of history. Her journey was one of balance between the weight of her family's legacy and the limitations placed upon her as a woman. She was a figure of authority within the walls of her castle, yet her influence often remained hidden from the public eye. She was bound by duty to her family, to her children, and to her marriage, but within those bounds, she found ways to carve out spaces of quiet power. Her life was shaped by the expectations of society, but also by the subtle ways she navigated them, often with grace and determination. Behind every noblewoman was a quiet resilience, a strength that did not always make it into the history books, but one that endured nonetheless. She may have lived in a world that often relegated her to the background, but she still shaped the lives of those around her. Whether it was through her role as an advisor to her husband, her management of estates and wealth, or her quiet influence in the royal court, she wielded power in ways that were both subtle and profound. Her voice may not have been loud, but it was present, an ever-present force that guided the decisions and actions of those who ruled. But her struggles were real, and they were many. The wars, the tragedies, the losses, each one left a mark on her soul, yet she continued. Through widowhood, the death of children, the constant demands of marriage and family, she endured. These personal struggles were the hidden burdens of her life, the ones that rarely found their way into the official records, yet they were as much a part of her story as any battle fought in her name. In her grief and her endurance there was a quiet heroism. Even as her life was shaped by her circumstances, she found ways to leave her mark on history. But how does history remember her? Often her legacy is tied to her beauty, her wealth, or the alliances she formed through marriage. These were the aspects of her life that were visible to the chroniclers and historians who wrote the narratives of the past. The quieter aspects of her influence, the ways in which she shaped politics, guided her children, or managed the affairs of the estate, were often relegated to the margins. History tends to remember her as a wife, a mother, and a daughter, but rarely as the powerful, intelligent woman she truly was. The legacy of the medieval noblewoman, therefore, is a complex one. It is a legacy marked by quiet influence and hidden strength, by the ways in which she managed to navigate a world that often excluded her from positions of overt power. Her contributions, though sometimes obscured by time and the lens through which history has been written, were no less significant. She was a keeper of her family's honor, a manager of its lands and wealth, and a force in the political affairs of the kingdom, and yet so much of this remains untold. As we reflect on the life of the medieval noblewoman, we are reminded of the countless women throughout history whose stories have been forgotten or hidden. Women who, in their quiet strength, shaped the world in ways that we may never fully understand. They were not always seen, but they were always there, working behind the scenes, holding together families, kingdoms, and societies. Their stories are woven into the very fabric of history, even if they are not always acknowledged in the textbooks. How will we remember these women? How will we remember the noblewoman who navigated a world of power, privilege, and limitations? Perhaps it is time to look beyond the surface, beyond the roles she was expected to play, and to see her as she truly was, an individual with agency, with intelligence, and with resilience. Perhaps it is time to recognize that her legacy is not just in the marriages she made or the children she bore, but in the quiet, unseen ways she shaped the world around her. The story of the medieval noblewoman is not just a story of the past. It is a story that continues to resonate with us today, as we look at the roles women play in our own lives and in the world around us. The struggles, the sacrifices, the quiet strength, they are qualities that transcend time, that connect us to the women who came before us. And perhaps, in reflecting on her life, we can better understand the power of resilience, the importance of quiet influence, and the profound impact that women, both seen and unseen, have had on the course of history. As we close this chapter, we are left with a reflective thought. How many other stories, like that of the medieval noblewoman, remain untold? How many women, throughout history, have shaped the world without ever receiving the recognition they deserve? Let us remember them, not just for their roles as wives and mothers, but for their strength, their intelligence, and their quiet power. Let us honor their legacies, not just as figures in the background, but as the powerful, influential women they were. As we conclude this journey into the life of a medieval noblewoman, I invite you to pause and reflect on the many women who, throughout history, have played intricate and often invisible roles. Their stories, while not always written in the grand annals of history, have shaped the course of events in ways we may never fully understand. They were more than the roles they were expected to play. They were intelligent, resilient, and strategic women who navigated complex worlds with grace and strength. Yet so often their contributions were relegated to the margins, overshadowed by the louder voices of kings, knights, and warriors. Consider, for a moment, the countless untold stories of women whose lives remain hidden behind the veil of time. How many women, throughout history, have shaped the world through their quiet influence, their resilience, and their wisdom? How many of them faced unimaginable struggles, yet continued to persevere, their voices unheard, their legacies unacknowledged? And yet, despite this, their lives remained significant. They shaped families, lands, kingdoms, and cultures. It is easy to focus on the men who wielded power in the public eye, but in doing so, we often overlook the quiet power that women held behind the scenes. Their influence was not always visible, but it was no less important. From advising their husbands to managing estates, from guiding their children to shaping political alliances, noble women played pivotal roles in the world of the medieval era. The world may not have fully seen their contributions, but their legacies endure in the families they nurtured, the lands they safeguarded, and the decisions they quietly shaped. As we reflect on these untold stories, I encourage you to consider the ways in which we can better remember the women of history not just as figures in the background, but as active, powerful forces who shape the world in ways both big and small. Their resilience, their quiet strength, and their ability to navigate the complexities of their time are qualities that we can all learn from. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What aspect of this journey resonated most with you? Was there a particular moment in the life of the noblewoman that stood out to you? Or perhaps a broader reflection on the hidden roles that women have played throughout history? Please share your reflections and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into history's hidden stories. As we continue to uncover the untold stories of the past, I invite you to join me on this journey. What other histories, what other lives have been lost to time or overlooked by historians? What new perspectives can we discover by looking at the past through the lens of the women who lived it? Let's continue exploring these hidden worlds, and together we can give voice to the women whose stories deserve to be heard. So, until next time, let's keep reflecting on the quiet strength of those who shaped the world from the shadows, and continue to uncover the untold histories that have yet to be shared.